The Search Podcast USA Edition series is sponsored by Ascen. Ascen is a top employer of record in North America that exclusively helps staffing and recruitment agencies hire contractors compliantly throughout the US and Canada. Ascen's all-in-one white-label platform handles onboarding, timesheets, payroll, benefits, insurance, invoicing, and optional financing so you can grow quickly in the US and Canada. Start growing your staffing agency in the US today with Ascen. Visit us at ascen.com.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to a new episode of the Search Podcast. Once again, back, Elliott Manning from the Cayman Recruitment Group. The Search Podcast is all US based. For those that have listened, we've done nearly, 110 episodes now. We've interviewed founders of recruitment companies, directors of recruitment companies that are either in the US or going to the US. We've spoken to suppliers in the US, tech companies in the US, all within the staffing industry. This week I brought a guest on, someone I've worked with for quite a long time now, speak to on a regular basis, and has been successful in building a business over in the US. Has had some hurdles in, different directions, but ultimately has got a phenomenal plan in place. Would love for our listeners to listen to this. And ultimately, for those that are in Texas, Austin in particular, definitely want to hear out. But I'll let you take an intro, Justin, on who you are, company, and what you guys do.
Sure. So, I'm Justin, founder of Certus Recruitment, 25 years old this year. Started in the UK, but expanded into Australia in 2018, and then we opened our office in Austin in 2021, having originally built the business to a reasonable level from the UK for the year before that. So we are about 4 years into our journey in the US. It's been a big learning curve, but I'm sure we'll get to that through the podcast, Elliott.
Let's do it, mate. Let's do it. You guys have been around for a very long time. I actually applied for multiple sales jobs. I remember probably about nearly 20 years ago now. I think you guys were based, and you probably still are, somewhere like, is it like in the West End of London somewhere?
Yeah, we were. Yeah, Covent Garden, we were.
That's it. I don't remember if you got me a job. I can't recall, but I ended up in recruitment anyway. So, US, where did this come about? Why did this come about? How did you guys get that, I suppose, that trajectory in the business to move forward with it?
So I think over the years, we started as a sales recruitment business across all sectors, and that evolved into being predominantly the tech sector. And then probably about eight or 10 years ago, we went beyond go-to-market and moved into the tech side as well. So the business is split down the middle. Half the consultants work on the tech side, half on go-to-market. And if we look at the tech sector, and in particular SaaS and AI, those businesses tend to originate from either the US, the UK, or Australasia. And typically their expansion involves moving to those particular geographies if they're not in them. So following the English-speaking world to some extent. So it was a natural evolution after opening Australia that the third location should be the US. I think also you hear all the rumours about high fees, high salaries, and the proportional lack of recruitment businesses, which makes it attractive. Albeit, I think we now know that what sounds attractive isn't always the case when you first start out.
Unfortunately, it seems to be, but still got the land of opportunity over in the US. I mean, in terms of what you've seen over there, what's it? I suppose what's it done for the business, and in sense of like, since you've been doing it, has it been helpful against your P&L and the revenue stream of the fees that are over there? What impact have you seen it make?
So I think we're still relatively early in our journey in the US, and but what is particularly useful is the fact that the fee sizes are considerably better than in other geographies. So the ability to make a business profitable in the US once you get going is much greater. The tax burden is markedly reduced from other geographies, and therefore running a business, certainly in Texas, is a relatively business-friendly place to be. So that for those of us used to the UK with VAT, PAYG, corporation tax, all the like, it's a much simpler proposition operating in the US once you work around how to operate.
Why was there a reason you
It's
chose
relatively
Texas,
profitable.
Justin? Like, why did you go over to Austin in the first place? Was that strategical, or was it more talent led?
No, it was more strategic. We looked at the locations that tech businesses were moving to. Obviously, everyone knows Silicon Valley, but actually, there's a fairly significant exodus from Silicon Valley because costs there have become so great. And Austin, for every two people leaving Silicon Valley, one of them moves to Austin. So I think when we look at the big tech hubs in the US now, you've got obviously Silicon Valley, California. You've then got Florida, which is burgeoning, and then the Carolinas to some extent. But Austin, when we added up uh, the volume of business that's there, the
Yeah.
relative ease it is to set up in Texas, and its central location, it in terms of being able to support the whole of the US, it just made sense.
So, I mean, you might have answered my next question already, but do you think Austin is a place, if you went back on this, 3, 4 years ago, would you still go to Austin? Would you have looked anywhere else by now?
No, I'd still go to Austin.
Still in
I
Austin.
think um, there is a lot going on in Florida, and I know a lot of businesses that are establishing there. Um, for me, that may well be a good second location in the US, but Florida is so very far from the rest of the US, and the
Mm,
time zone between East Coast and West Coast, by comparison to being centrally located,
yeah.
still to me makes Austin the better um, the better option. I think the other thing is where it's still a relatively small and growing city, even things like just getting to the airport and getting on a plane to go somewhere else
Yeah.
is very, very easy in Austin by comparison to other locations.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Absolutely. In terms of like, look, everyone knows about the opportunity in terms of the fees and turnaround times and all of the good stuff, but what have you actually genuinely, since you've been doing this, learned about the US? Is there anything in particular that you've seen that, you found, interesting, difficult, or positive or negative?
Yeah. I think the first thing is that the UK businesses in particular need to be aware of if they're considering going to the US is the way we do recruitment here does not work in the same way in the US at all.
No.
You might be lucky, but throwing a big number of people at a business in the US and expecting them to bill within the first few months is a good way to throw away any profit you've made previously. Um, the US market, the way I describe it is, if we take the term recruitment consultant in the UK, we often do a lot of recruiting. In the US, you do a lot of consulting, and therefore relationships and networking are vital. And that's not always something that we're great at in the UK or the UK market requires. And therefore, you need to be strategic in the way you approach business development. You need to be prepared to work at relationships for a long time before they'll hand business over. In the UK, you can still do a cold call and win a vacancy on call one. That almost never happens in the US. You need to talk to people for months, building trust, building credibility, showing shared connections, and
Yeah.
evidencing your knowledge before they'll deal with you. The great thing on the flip side of that is they're also very loyal, and because they view us as consultants, once they let you into their business, they really look for your counsel, and they value your counsel, so you become an important part of their talent strategy,
Yeah.
which is the enjoyable part of recruitment from my perspective.
Do you know, I've noticed, I mean, it might be the GTM space or the tech startup world, a lot of recruitment agencies that operate in the US in this particular marketplace. And we'll go back to the area on the recruiting style in a moment. They all become like advisors and investors, and like, they sit on
Yeah,
boards of these companies. And you just think that, like, you're not just a recruiter, you're actually an advisor. Like you just said, you're not just consulting,
yeah.
you're actually making a big impact. And I think that if you can get into the right circles in the tech market in the US, that's something that is, a hell of a lot more achievable than anywhere else in the world.
Absolutely, and because Austin is a city that's based around a relatively small central business district, everything's happening in that CBD. Therefore, it's very easy to attend and go to networking events because they're always in the same 1 kilometer, 1 mile
Mm,
square. So, but you do need to be prepared to invest in going to the breakfast meets, the networking events finding the various associations and groups that are associated with your sector and becoming involved. And it's not just turning up, it's actually getting involved and offering advice, offering your expertise for nothing, so that people will start building that trust, and you can build that credibility with them.
Do you think it's changed the recruitment space in a sense? And it goes back to your consulting comment before, that in the US, is it necessarily sitting there about doing 100 cold calls a day, or actually getting out and about, or both?
So I think any recruiter still needs to do the right amount of activity. But I think the ability to just do 100 cold calls a day and hope to get results in the US is unlikely to produce the same results as if you really spend time determining your target audience and working out a sort of multi-channel strategy for engaging with those people. So engaging with them through LinkedIn on the comment side, engaging with the events or the networking associations that your target clients are associated with, and demonstrating a consistent and ongoing effort to build relationships with them, rather than hoping that you might just be lucky and get them on the first call.
Yeah, and we'll go back to kind of what you said before about the type of talent that you get over there. Obviously, I know I'd like to think more than most around like how difficult it is, because obviously we're the ones, and my team are trying to find them all day, every day. But I think the one big struggle that I've noticed in general across the US with British firms is the lack of, ability to scale at the level that they want, and the ability to scale in general at all, because they can't find the right talent that suits their business in the way that they want to work. So, you've got two options. You either change the whole method around your business strategy of how you operate, and you go down what other firms do with that 180 model because it suits the US model very well, or you have that long, slow slog to really try and find the right people for your business, which, everyone is in the same boat, especially in, I've seen it in Austin in particular. There's not many businesses that have seen that scalability that they are expecting to go after. Have you seen the same within your business? Have you experienced that?
Absolutely. And I think the key thing is, if you've got a great system and structure in place in the UK, you can ultimately create a class of trainees and get them to follow that process, and they will produce results by doing the repetition and just doing the actions. That definitely doesn't work in the US. And I think there is still a model that allows you to recruit trainees, but those trainees have to come in as what the US call recruiters, which is delivery. And they need to be surrounded by experienced recruiters to learn from. It's a very different mindset, and equally finding people who are prepared to do the business development side is particularly difficult. 360 is not common in the US at all. There are some, but they're not common. And I think part of that is related to the type of business that the established companies win. If you're in our type of sector and you've got a client in the UK that does 10 plus hires a year, that would be considered a pretty good client. In the US, it's quite common to break into a client that might be looking to recruit 100 or 200 people a year. Therefore, the ability to have an overall account director managing that account, serviced by a team full of delivery people, actually works, but only when you've got the right people bringing those clients on board.
Absolutely.
And it's very difficult. It's very difficult to plan for that. Therefore, I think if I look at the number of UK companies that set up in Austin around the time we did, and I'm aware of 10 or 11, I think only one or two of them still have an office in Austin. And we're talking about some very, very big, well-known tech recruitment brands from the UK who invested 7 figures and burned through that 7 figures incredibly quickly. So I think it requires a lot more planning than it would be to open a new office in the UK.
Yeah, I mean, look, I agree. I see it all, unfortunately, very often, and that's why I made that kind of remark around the fact that there's so many firms that have gone to the US. They've had a very stagnant growth kind of trajectory in their business models. But it's not just lack of the fact that they're not good firms at all. It's just a lack of good talent that they can get access to, which unfortunately isn't there quick enough. And I suppose that's what the UK has always been good for, that there's so much talent, but in a saturated space, but it still gave you opportunity and options as well. Whereas in the US, it's so big that you don't have the same thing unless you're in maybe New York, for example. But even then, it's even harder. Trust me as well. It makes no difference. With you guys and going into the kind of like the 2026, 27 period, like what's the goal now with the business? What's the plan? Like, what are you looking to achieve with the company, Justin?
So growth is what we're after, and we've invested a lot of time and money in building those relationships that are starting to become fruitful now, which is lovely. I expect that we will grow the US business in a different manner to the way we've grown elsewhere. In that, I do think we'll go down the route of ultimately hiring some delivery people to focus on the candidate resourcing side.
Yeah.
It's just about getting that balance right between the two. I think if we were to try and grow through 360 only, much as that might be naturally how I think recruitment should be done, the reality is we just won't grow. And one of the challenges you face when you're trying to bring on a bigger client in the US is, have you got the capacity to deliver for them? Are they going to bother adding you as a supplier if you've then only got one or two people working that account? The answer is often no. So it's a bit of a chicken and egg situation. I think the other thing is, Elliott, you'll know all too well, is when you say the word recruiter in the US, 90% of people in the sector say they're recruiters, but they are just delivery people. So you need to even adjust the terminology that you use to attract those people. But yeah, the plan is still to continue that growth. For us, we've made the decision that we want to have a balance of US nationals and UK nationals. I think all of one and is as bad as all of the UK is as bad as having all US. You need to have a mix, and I think if we get that blend right, we can be successful.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, look, Justin, I mean, in terms of like what you're trying to achieve and what you want to do, it's just all about having that patience and time as well in the US and not rush it, because otherwise you will spend a lot of money and it's an expensive mistake every time you do something in the US. Unfortunately, it's always been the case. I've experienced it, you've experienced it, and I think most people that listen to this who do the same thing would have as well. If anyone is listening to this podcast episode and they are interested in getting themselves over to the States, if you've got a GTM background or technology, reach out to Justin directly and see what's going on over in the business. They've got a phenomenal presence, and they have done in the UK, Australia as well, and in the US itself. But always there to listen in terms of anything that you guys have any questions about. And again, even if you're looking for a job, feel free to reach out to him. Justin, any other final notes to add to the audience in terms of any key pointers that you could say to pass on?
I think the final thing I'd add is my experience in the UK is that you can train a recruiter how to become a recruiter, and then they learn the sector that they're targeting. In the US, you really need to know and understand what you're targeting and how it works at a level that you can have a discussion with those hiring managers. And therefore, if you are thinking of going to the US, spend time investing and getting to know the sector that you're going to be targeting at a level beyond just job descriptions.
Absolutely. No, Justin, really good advice. Thank you very much for your time and jumping on this podcast. I'm sure I'll speak to you in the short while anyway this week, regardless. But look, I'll kind of leave you to it. I wish you the best of luck with everything you're trying to achieve this year. I'm sure you will, and hopefully the team at Cayman can help you do that as well.
Fantastic. Thanks for your help, Elliott.
Thanks, Justin.